Shoo, shoo. Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars and Auto House of Naples on a sweltering, miserable, balls hot Florida July morning. I mean, it's the worst. It's just incredibly bad. I'm dripping, I'm wet, I'm sweaty. It's not even 7 o'clock and I've had it. I've already had it. And there's a few more months of this. It's not getting any better anytime soon. I'm driving a car without air conditioning and it absolutely just sucks. And frankly, again, that's why I'm anxious to get the hell out of Dodge and start, going somewhere where it's just a little bit less like a horrible, sweltering jungle. Look, here today, and yeah, I'm going to briefly cover, we've got a 1971 Volkswagen Type 3 Fastback. I'm very happy to have this car. I just acquired it, at the... It doesn't matter. Anyway, look, I've got the car, and I'm going to get into it here in a minute. But let me just cover a couple of things first. Number one, thank you again for all the entries into the Goat Flask giveaway. I'm going through them. I'm printing them out. I can't believe how many there were. I'll be drawing the names out of a hat this week, and we'll be shipping those things out very soon to the winning entries. And of course, I'm going to put together a video at some stage of the cars that people did send in, and I'll, have a little comment or two on the ones that I see. But it's quite a lot to go through. I'm one guy, and frankly, I'm somewhat lazy and drunken most of the time, so be patient. It's going to take a little while, but we'll get it done. The motorhome project, as you know, that's the future, so to speak, of the channel, where I'll be driving around a little bit doing some stuff. And going over it, making a list out. There's more renovations than I really thought were going to happen. I'll probably get a couple of short trips in before they do, but it's going to at least need tires, because those are absolute shit on it, and I wouldn't trust it going anywhere further than Seabrook. I shouldn't even trust it going that far, but what the hell are you going to do? But anyway, we'll see if we can't get that going as well. The animal front has been kind of strange. Birds are quiet. I haven't seen too many of them. There was a deer this morning on the way to Peter's house. It was big, it was unattractive, it was menacing, and it just slinked away as I drove by, thank God, instead of coming at me. And of course, Peter's cats, they're over there right now. Yeah, they're both of them over there. They're grouping for an attack. Maybe they took care of the birds for me. I should be thankful for that, but I have a feeling they're coming for me next, so we'll keep an eye on that and see how we go. Speaking of Peter, he's off gallivanting around Europe again, lighting his cigars with $100 bills, spending money. Last I heard, he was in Norway driving motorcycles. I don't know if he's on a Nimbus, which would be brand appropriate. He's probably on his Boss Hoss, which I'm sure the people of Norway find fascinating. And I didn't see any Tinderellas in his Facebook post, which makes me think the Scandinavian Tinderellas are probably more money than he wants to spend. So I get the feeling he's riding this one solo. Just because you're loaded up doesn't mean that you get any less cheap. And of course, that's where Peter's at. So God bless him. I'm so happy he's there in lovely, cool weather. And I'm here sweltering in his unmowed yard because his teenage kid has taken the opportunity to be lazy while Peter's gone. God bless him for that. I did go to Mecum, Orlando. I was there during the week. It's where I got this car and a couple of others. I went with a friend of mine. I'm not going to name any names because his name's Al. All right, and Al is lethal. Al is one of these guys. He's like the little red devil on your shoulder. It was like something from Training Day. He hands me this thing to eat, and he's like, "Oh, take this, take this, take that." So I do, and he's like, "Oh my God, you just ate more edibles than anyone I've ever seen before. Let's go buy some cars." And man, it was absolutely beyond description. I don't know how I survived that 2 days, but I did, and I'm back here, and, we'll see what cars show up, because I sure as hell don't remember buying many of them, and I ended up with like 5, so this is going to be fantastic. But that said, having taken this one home last night, driven it around, I'm not regretting it. I've had a lot of fun with it, and let's just get right into it. So, again, 1971 Volkswagen Type 3 Fastback. It's kind of a forgotten Volkswagen, except amongst Volkswagen purists. Some people, I drive it around, they think it's a Volvo or something. It's not immediately identifiable as a classic Volkswagen. It is, but there's some people, they just won't look and observe. But anyway, the Type 3, I think it deserves more recognition than it gets. For the most part, it's collected by sort of niche VW guys, and that doesn't seem fair given its technological significance, which, we'll get into in a while. This one was sort of a barn find in New York City, if that's possible, because I don't think there's many barns in Manhattan. But according to the guy that I got it from, they found it in the storage unit of a deceased widow. And it apparently has 29,000 miles. It's all original inside and out. And now having driven it, lived with it for a couple of days, I can say, I think that's actually accurate. I mean, it feels as close to a new vintage Volkswagen as any one that I've ever been in before, and certainly seems to be all original in every way. And the drive is just absolutely incredible. I can say without any sales pitch at all that this is one of the best cars that I've ever driven. And frankly, I hate a lot of cars. I love a few, and I have really enjoyed driving this one around. The Type 3 was also called the 1500 and then the 1600, and it has a bit of an interesting history. They were made in 3 body styles. There was the notchback, which, are very collectible today, but at the time were considered a bit dated looking. The fastback, like this one, which of course does have a fastback, and the square back, which is essentially a wagon. And it was Volkswagen's attempt to up their Beetle game and create a car that was more in line with an increasingly affluent German people that were already sort of enjoying mid-size offerings from Opel, BMW, European Ford, and some others. And Volkswagen was behind the game on that. They were still just cranking out the Beetles, and they needed to come up with something that sort of upped the game a little bit, and it did. It did meet that goal. I mean, it lost the Beetle's running board setup in favor of a longer and wider ponton. I think that's how you'd think I'd know it at this point, but whatever. A ponton body, which allowed for more interior space. It widened the rear end. It bolted the cooling fan to the crank on the engine, which created a lot more luggage space, because all of a sudden the engine became about the size of a suitcase, and it did what it was supposed to do, especially in the wagon variant. I mean, you could fit a ton of crap inside the car, not to mention your family, and drive around. And so it became a pretty popular car in Europe. And, of course, it does have the legendary, and, without sounding cliched, it's true. There was a legendary build quality to these cars, these Volkswagen products in the 1960s, as built by a bunch of austere and humorless German Lutherans. But man, could they put a car together. But first, look, before we get into the car, let's have a quick look at 1971. The year I was born, by the way, and the year this car was born and drove around on the streets. The New York Times began publishing the Pentagon Papers, which were a leaked classified report that showed the government, the U.S. government, was withholding and misrepresenting information about the Vietnam War, which was apparently shocking at the time that a government would do such a thing. I think we'd laugh at that today. God knows that's all they do. But it was a big deal at the time, and it very much strengthened the anti-war vibes in America. The 26th Amendment passed, which gave people 18 and up the right to vote. That has been, it was 21 before that, and a bunch of people had been lobbying to make it 18. This would have been a horrible mistake if people that age ever actually bothered to vote, which they don't, thank God. Disney World opened up in October of 71. That's the month I was born. And the cost of an adult ticket was $3.50. So I'm not sure what it is today, but I think it's a little bit more than that. Walt himself died before construction began, and then his brother Roy took over, actually did complete it, and then he died a couple of months after completion. So, kind of a sad story, not really in line with the happiest place on earth. There's a lot of death involved, but I'm sure people have fun there. The United Arab Emirates was formed, did away with 80 years of British rule, which I'm sure was great for them. And speaking of Britain, their education secretary in 1971, a woman named Margaret Thatcher, ended the free school milk program for children over the age of 7. They called her Maggie Thatcher the Milk Snatcher, and I have to say, I absolutely love that woman. I mean, who runs on a platform of taking milk away from 7-year-olds? That takes balls the size of boulders, and God love her for that. The U.S. ping pong team went to China a la Forrest Gump in what was considered an epic feat of diplomacy, and that's kind of a la Henry Kissinger. The NASDAQ Stock Exchange debuted, as did Amtrak, NPR, FedEx, and Greenpeace. So a lot of stuff came out in 1971. Oh, and ladies in Switzerland got the right to vote, which probably didn't end well, but not being Swiss, I don't really know. Maybe someone from there can chime in. The top 3 songs, 1971, were Joy to the World by Three Dog Night, a song that I absolutely friggin' hate. Maggie May by Rod Stewart, I'm not a big fan of that either. And It's Too Late by Carole King, and it certainly was. Notable movies of 71, you had A Clockwork Orange, which was a little bit disturbing. You had, what did you have? The French Connection, Dirty Harry, one of the great movies of all time, The Last Picture Show, and The Andromeda Strain. The only movie that I remember a Type 3 being in was in the 80s with Harrison Ford, Witness, where he took the car from his sister to drive Kelly McGillis as an Amish girl. I'm not sure I bought that one even then, to safety somewhere in Pennsylvania. And that's, I'm sure other people can chime in with Type 3s in the movies, but that's the only one that I remember. So, look, my glasses are fogging up. I'm dripping again. I'm going to need a minute to get my shit together. So let me just pause there, take a second, and we'll get right back into it. Hold on one moment. I have got to say that the humidity is beyond ridiculous. I mean, this is just not fit for human consumption at all. Nobody should be here during this time. They just shouldn't, or at least they shouldn't be outside. I mean, this is the Florida equivalent of 40 below weather in Minnesota or something. Everyone should just be, inside sucking up the air conditioning. But here I am outside in Peter's yard again while he's motorcycling around Norway. Anyway, Beetle fatigue had set in a lot earlier in Europe than America. I mean, in America, Beetles were still selling like hotcakes, while in Europe, people had sort of moved on to more significant cars in terms of space and room and that sort of thing, and were craving something a bit bigger than a Beetle. It sort of delayed the Type 3, because with America buying up every Beetle it could get its hands on, VW didn't want to screw that up out by bringing in another offering. So in 61, they released the Type 3 in Europe only, and they started selling them over there. This led to what was really the first sort of gray market incidents, at least in a grand scale, in the United States. That would later go on to be a Mercedes thing back in the in the 80s. But in the 60s, it was a Beetle thing and a Volkswagen thing. So the Type 3 started coming into America through unofficial channels. New cars would be imported from Canada or Europe or Australia, wherever they could find them, and sold as used cars here at a pretty good premium. In fact, to the point that they were kind of stupidly expensive, like $3,000 or more, when you could buy a new Beetle for about $1,500. So at that price, because it was comparable to a lot of more substantial cars, it really only appealed to Volkswagen nerds. But there were enough of them to actually bring thousands of them over before the official VW debut, and they did. And in fact, the Volkswagen really didn't discourage it for whatever reason. The dealers were probably kind of pissed off, but Volkswagen maybe saw it as a marketing test to see how the Type 3 would do, and dealers sort of had to give in, and then they started importing gray market cars and buying parts for them to sell and servicing them and having them run around. But all of that changed in 66 when the Type 3 finally did come to these shores, and it was basically a modest success. I mean, you couldn't say it failed, it didn't, but it was nowhere near as prolific as the Beetle, and has since sort of become almost forgotten and really only looked at by sort of niche collectors, although that's starting to change. And that seems a bit odd given the technological significance of the car, which we'll get into in a minute. But first, the exterior styling. I think Americans liked it more in the photos than when it actually showed up. It's a more photogenic car than it is in person. That said, I absolutely love it. I think it looks fantastic, particularly in the Fastback form, which was a little bit strange for Volkswagen at the time. I mean, we're talking about a bunch of austere and ultra-conservative German Lutherans, and there was really no reason for the Fastback other than to sort of mimic the fastback trend that was becoming popular in the United States with like the Mustang and the Barracuda and the Rambler Marlin. It just seems a bit, partyish for Germans, and they did it anyway. And I think it looks absolutely terrific. Again, obviously no running boards, much wider. I wouldn't call it slab-sided, but it is, not at all like the Beetle. You got the same round lamps from the Beetle. Sort of an interesting VW emblem treatment that swoops back from the front, almost reminiscent of an SLR McLaren years later, maybe not quite as sporty. This one, the 71, is the facelifted version. It got wider running lights on the front and also on the back, bigger taillights, a little bit more, I don't know, it is what it is. It's one of the facelift cars, and it does look pretty cool, I think, overall. I love the chrome around the windows. I think that looks great. You can see it's got the Beetle gas cap up front, which you'd expect. You've got a badge there denoting, I don't know, I didn't even look at this thing earlier. I don't know what the hell it says. It looks like it's somebody hiking through the forest with a midget on their shoulder, but I can't see it too clearly with fogged up glasses. Styled steel wheels with VW caps. You've got little stainless trim down the door, impact strips. You've got more stainless trim on the rockers. You got good looking vents for that rear engine on the the quarter panels. You've got these incredibly long and interesting side windows. I can't believe how much longer they are than the front. You've got a very cool looking little stubby tail. The only modification, and I believe it is a mod, there's no way that's a factory exhaust. I think somebody must have put that on at some point. Other than that, the car appears all factory, and that doesn't seem to upset anything. You can see it says automatic, which we'll get into in a minute. That was also fascinating to me. But all in all, I think it's a pretty damn good looking car. And of course, it does have that epic German build quality with thick metal and parts that don't break, and all the stuff that people loved them for. So let's have a look inside the trunk and the engine. And this is interesting. There's a little lever here that you pull to open it up. No levers outside, so when the car is locked, it's locked. There you can see it has enormous trunk space, which of course was even bigger in the wagon versions, but is pretty damn good here. The one thing I'd say is you probably don't want to put like butter or ice cream in there, because it is essentially right on top of the motor, which, as you know, in a Beetle or an air-cooled VW, they get kind of hot. This is interesting. I don't know if that's the original warning triangle or just an aftermarket one from that era, but it was kind of neat to see it in there. And then if we open this up, you can have suit closed. I love German engineering from this time. I really, really do. All right, so can I not do that lefty? What the? God, being weak sucks. No, it was I was going the wrong way. All right, let me lift that up. There is a very convenient little, oh God, lift handle here. There, you can plug that in and keep that up. So there it is. Look how flat that engine is. Again, they moved the cooling fan to the crankshaft, which put it down low, which made the engine about the size of a suitcase. It was up to 1600 cc. Again, this was supposed to be upmarket from the Beetle, so it had a bigger engine. Here's what it's interesting about this. Is a 71 model, but in 68, these cars all came standard with a Bosch, what the hell was it? I think it was the D-Jetronic fuel injection system, which was very, very new at the time and not used on any other car. And you could say with some, and some people do, with some assurity, that it was the father of the modern automobile. I mean, you know, there came a time a couple of decades later when every single car had the same system, where it actually uses a computer and sensors to meter the air and fuel to make the car run well at startup, going down the road, that sort of thing. It uses it's an analog computer, but it's still a computer, and it actually works really, really well. And now, it's not the first use of a system like that. There was some American stuff in the 50s that did it, but that was hyper expensive and super low production and really didn't work out. Whereas in this car, it did. It worked out very, very well and sort of became a standard and a staple of the car industry, which again is why some people say this is the father of the modern automobile. It's a pretty obscure car for getting, you know, credit like that. So, who knows? You make your own decision. Another thing that's interesting in 68, they came out with a 3-speed automatic, which was a little bit rare, and this car does have. And that necessitated a redesign of the rear end, which went from the sort of old dated swing axle thing that kind of accentuated the ass-heavy, ass-engined oversteer thing and made it a little bit easier to handle. And that also became sort of a modern staple of modern cars, the sort of modern independent rear suspension. And then the next year, even the standard transmission got it because it was just better. And pretty neat stuff. And you couple that, it's got rear drums, but it does have front discs. And, you know, of course, torsion bars front and rear, which is a VW thing. But you've got 4-wheel independent suspension, front discs, fuel injection, and an automatic transmission in a 68 Volkswagen. This one's a 71, but you could get it in 68. And I have to say, that's just pretty cool shit. And really does sort of have a more modern flair than the car would indicate. So all very, very cool. Let's get that back down. I'm banging it around, saying, oh God, I'm screwing shit up. All right, okay, I'll wait till I put down the camera to do that. It needs to get seated properly. We'll have a quick look inside the frunk. And the access to that is here in the glove box. And again, this was a big deal for these cars, was the amount of luggage room. That's what made them more appealing to larger families and turned the Beetle into something that could be used as a family car. So lots of space up there in the front. You can see the spare tire angled forward. You can see the condition of this thing. It's just unbelievable. I mean, you know, you often see cars that, 29,000 miles. Well, who the hell knows? I mean, it has 359,000. I actually believe the mileage on this car, the way it runs, drives, the way the original stuff looks. This is an absolute time capsule, and it's just been an amazing car to drive around. It's another one that I flirted with the idea of owning, but again, I have nowhere to put anything. It's just a crappy idea. I'll just ruin anything I get. But anyway, nice big front storage unit. You could put all kinds of crap up there. It does have the traditional VW spare tire air charging. It's a ballsy thing to do, because one leak and you've got a flat spare tire, which seems crazy, but it seems to work in these cars. I guess good German engineering, and everything looking great. So anyway, there it is. I'm going to pause again, dry myself off, and then we're going to hop in, look at the interior, and go for a drive. So bear with me one moment. Alright, so let's have a look inside. And again, 65 horsepower, 3-speed automatic. This is going to be thrilling. Here's that German build quality I'm talking about. So listen to the way this door closes. I mean, it's just got this lovely sort of thud to it, almost Mercedes-like, but obviously a little bit, less in terms of bank vault, but it's still there. It's still that German engineering. And, the interior of this car, the way it's held up, I don't care if it's a barn find, but it's absolutely incredible. The materials that they used, the build quality that was put into it. I mean, you can tell these were a bunch of German Lutherans working their asses off to make sure these cars were super high quality. And they are. You can see the very tall front seats with a seat back that's adjustable with that little handle on the side and the roller knob there. All very nice stuff. If you move this forward, you're going to fit 3 Canadians back there, no issues. You also have a big package shelf where you can put all your VW crap up there. And talk about luxury. It actually has a center armrest. I mean, as if the Kaiser himself is going to be driving in the back seat. You've got 2 ashtrays in the back in case people were still smoking then, which of course they were. You got pretty decent luggage room. You have a transmission hump that makes no sense because there's no transmission hump needed because everything's in the back. Of course, that does also channel heat from the engine up into the cabin in a really awful and meaningless way if you're in a cold climate, but yeah, it is what it is. But you can see the sort of epic condition of this thing, and the rather attractive black vinyl going into that white perforated headliner, which is all very nice and cool. The steering wheel, a little thin affair, obviously updated for 71 with horn doesn't work without the key on, so let's put that on. But you can see the dash is very interesting. It's got vinyl covering at the top. You've got 3 gauges. You've got a big clock where the tach should be, your fuel gauge, your 110 mile an hour speedo, and a bunch of little warning gauges there. Over on this side, you have your emergency flashers, you have your headlights, you have your defrost and interior blower fan. In fact, let me get the windows down for when we drive this thing. You can aim these little smoker windows at you to get some ventilation, which is all very nice stuff. And there you go. You got more vents coming out. Well, actually, these are completely blocked off. I don't know how they work at all. Well, there they go. You can open these things up. All right, now they're open, so we should get some cool air out of there. This one did not come with a radio, factory delete. You can see it's got a chrome plug there in the antenna, and I guess that was a bridge too far. You also have a brake warning light there, I believe, and these are your fan controls. Look into the little glove box, and I love that they bring the clementine color from outside into the interior across the dashboard. I think that looks great. We open that up, and we'll see. We got business cards from. I love it. Okay, so from Maspeth, New York, we've got clock service, repair and sale of fine clocks. We know what that woman was into. And then we've got some period correct Lotar menthol cigarettes, which obviously have been in this glove box for a long time. I haven't got the packet of ownership materials yet, but it's supposed to come with an Austrian bill of sale. I have absolutely, what are these, toothpicks? God, there's all kinds of crap in here. And some kind of little tiny corn I wonder what they're using this thing for. I know what I'm going to use it for. Anyway, there it is. So there's some interesting shit in the glove box, which rubber bands, which have gone past their sell-by date. But anyway, there you go. So there's the glove box. You have a little pull-out ashtray. I don't know why they're bothering at all to put the PRN D21 on there. I guess they're going to put something on there. But they also have it down there. So I'm not sure why you need that. Makes a lot more sense when you had a manual gearbox. Over here is your rear defrost. That must have been a pretty fancy option at the time. You got wipe wash stock here. And you got your turn signal and high beam there. And a little VIN plate, and then some New York inspection stickers, and we got a vinyl sun visor here, and even a little teeny tiny 70s cocaine mirror. I mean, your lady friend who's looking in this thing is gonna have to look pretty hard to get any image of herself at all. But there it is. And you get this window down. You got a little pocket here. There's a nice little bit of gun storage, actually. You could fit some kind of a Walther PPK in there, and even a bigger gun, maybe even a Colt revolver of some kind. So gun storage is not terrible in this car. Interestingly, you can see that it has a two-prong slider there on the brake pedal. Of course, that leaves open what would have been a third pedal in a manual car. Let's fire this thing up. Oh, God, everything is so hard one-handed. Really, really is. All right, let me get this in here. There we go. And, you know, instantly, even if you were blindfolded, you'd be able to tell that you were in a Volkswagen just from the sound. Not to mention the sound of that irritating warning buzzer. But it's, you know, that area, but it's quieter because there's more insulation. There's, you know, the engine is underneath that panel with more in it. It's quieter than a lot of people at the time compared this to what a sedan Porsche would have felt like, which there was a strong call for. Porsche never did it, but there were people who wanted that. And it's a shame they didn't. That would have been kind of neat. But anyway, let's go for a spin. I like the way this works. So you have to lift it up to go back to reverse, but then it stops. You let it back down, and then you can put it in drive. And here's what fascinated me most of all about this car was how good it drives. I mean, the shift, well, we'll get into it as we go, but man, you know, I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for the automatic thing because, you know, everybody thinks a car guy should be rowing through the gears, but I will plainly say that I prefer the automatic in this car. I think it's better. It's more fun for me. One, because it's weird. You don't expect a Volkswagen with an automatic. And two, because of the way it behaves. I mean, it drives really... Look at that. Got a really angry, weird rabbit right there. Yeah, better run. Oh, there he goes. I can't blame Dalton for the windshield because I didn't really have him do this car, and you know, as much as I'd like to, I just can't. But I mean, man, this car is driving perfection. I mean, the wheel doesn't vibrate at all. The shifts are completely, almost imperceptible. I mean, it just shifts so flawlessly. Apparently, these automatics are known for being frictionless, so they don't really hurt gas mileage all that much. I think you get about 25 in this thing, even with the automatic. And it's just a lovely car to cruise down the road. I mean, power is obviously not incredible, but it ain't bad, and it doesn't have any trouble keeping up with the modern flow of traffic. I was running at, you know, 60 miles an hour this morning in a 45 zone without even thinking about it. And it just feels like a car that you could daily drive, which of course I presume was its mission at the time. And again, that goes to the preservation of this thing, where it actually feels as much like a new 71 Type 3 as you're probably ever going to find. I feel kind of lucky to have gotten this thing because it really helps me understand why people bought cars like this back then. And, you know, I mean, this is the original engine build, the original trans build, the original suspension, all with very low miles. This car feels like it would have in 1971, and it feels nice, and I can understand why people bought it. You know, the wheel goes where you point it. You know, there's very little play in the steering. let off the gas a little to shift, and there we are, cruising in third gear, 60 miles an hour, you know, going with the flow of traffic. It's just a really nice driving car. And honestly, more than anything, that's what surprised me. I did not expect that. I mean, if this thing had air conditioning, which I do believe was available in some years, it would be good enough for me to take to work every day without really thinking about it. And man, you get a lot of looks and interest as you're driving it around. So look, I'm not going to ramble on. Here it is, 1971 Volkswagen Type 3. This one is a Fastback. 29,000 miles, very, very clean, very nice original car, original paint, original interior. Again, something of a barn find that was gone through, you know, made so it would be a good driver. They, you know, fixed the brakes, flushed the fluids, flushed the fuel and all that stuff. And the thing is just an absolute time capsule. Just an absolute time capsule, and very, very fun to drive. And I have to say that I get it. I get why people bought these things, and I can understand the joy of driving them in a way that I couldn't before. You know, this is just a lot more substantial and fun to drive than any Beetle I've ever been in, and I get it. So anyway, it will be for sale at Auto House. I know we had one guy already snapping around on it from the lot yesterday, so hopefully it lasts, but otherwise, there it is. It'll be up for sale. If you have an interest, give them a call, 239-263-8500. Nice guys there. They'll be able to help you with whatever you want. Otherwise, I've got some more fun stuff coming up. Some of the other cars I bought without blind while out of my gourd, so we'll see what I ended up with. And we'll keep going with reviews until the motorhome thing happens, which is coming up. So thanks again for having a look. Couldn't do any of this without you guys. It means a lot that people are watching, and we will see you with the next one. Take care.